Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to our live event celebrating our book. Before I do, 150 questions Muslims must ask before marriage. I am joined by my wife and co-author Zahra. And feel free to, let me see if I have my phone as well so I could keep track. I guess I could keep this window open so I could keep track of questions if you ask any questions live. All right. So what's
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome.
Assalam.
Thanks for hopping on. We're so excited to have written this book, to share it with you all, to have accomplished and achieved a goal. And we just really wanted to have this little celebration party because many times we don't stop to celebrate. And so we wanted to not only take the time for us to celebrate, but to share that with the community, because it's so important for us to participate in celebrations of all sorts.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
But it is true. I think one of the the biggest robbers of joy in the modern age is this idea of achievement and how like it's always the next thing, right? Like as soon as I'm happy that I've been really wanting this pen and I was really praying for this pen and I finally got that pen. As soon as I get that pen, I'm like, okay, now what's next? Am I gonna write something with it? Am I gonna get a green pen next or a red pen next? And really being able to just be happy and celebrate and enjoy what you've achieved, even if it's just an intermediary step, like maybe you want not just a pen, you want a whole case of pens, like at least you have one pen, right? And to celebrate that. Why? There are a few reasons. The first one that I'll say, and this is something that I've seen a lot of people that I coach, is that if you don't pause to celebrate, you don't get to actually enjoy your success. You don't get to actually experience your success. Success is not, a lot of times we're just chasing success for success's sake. But what we're really looking for when we're chasing success, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a job, whether it's a company, whether it's sports, is not success itself, but it's that experience, the undertone, the feelings, the feeling of relaxation, the feeling of being supported by Allah, etc. That's really what we're looking for. It's not the thing itself that determines success for us. And so when you don't pause and reflect and appreciate it, you don't feel successful and nothing feels enough. And no matter how much you accomplish, you don't feel successful. There was one person, their first year in their business, they did, I think, $400,000, right? Which is, you know, a good amount of money for a single person. And they kept increasing their revenue over the years until they got to close to $10 million, right? And when you ask them, you know, did you feel successful during this process? This is amazing. 400,000, you know, already that's a great for a first year, all the way to $10 million. That's amazing, right? And they would confess like, oh no, I didn't feel successful while I was in it. Now that I am out of the business, I feel really successful. But before then, I was not feeling successful, right? And so that's why we want to make sure that we are pausing and celebrating our successes, inshallah ta'ala. So that's number one. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this. The other reason why we want to pause and celebrate is also because, right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, and if you thank me, I will increase you. I'll expand you, right? Right? So that's really important to pause and celebrate and be grateful for getting it wherever we are on this journey, even if it's an intermediate step, that's all good, right? So that's another really important thing for us to, the reason why we're celebrating and stopping there. So let me see here. Let me just fix my camera and check if there's any, make sure that I can see all the questions. I'm trying to make sure that, oh, there we go, view. All right, perfect. Okay, so a few housekeeping items, right? So what is our book? So our book is called Before I Do 150 Questions Muslims Must Ask Before Marriage. Of course, man, if you purchase the book, and thank you for your support, and I'm glad that it's helped so many people. You could go on our website and see all the reviews. But the reason why we published this book or wrote this book, and we wrote it very much in the open. Zahra and I had wanted to write a book about marriage for close to a decade, I would say, right?
Yeah.
Or so, but we never got to it. You know, life got in the way. And then when we decided to write it, we started writing it very openly with the community. We rapidly published our first edition. We're coming up with our second edition coming up soon, inshallah. And so basically, the reason why we wrote this book, see, a lot of people think that we wrote this book just to help you get married, right? Oh, this is going to be nice tactics and nice advice on how to get married. But that's not why we wrote the book, right? We wrote the book not just to get married for marriage's sake. We wrote this book to help you experience what we call a miraculous marriage, a marriage that expands you, a marriage that gets you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just in virtue of being married, but actually because you are embodying more excellence than if you were alone, that you are achieving more excellence as opposed to if you were alone or single, right? Or didn't meet the love of your life. And that's the key. That's why we wrote this book. It isn't just to get married for marriage's sake. That's great, but that is not the goal. Too many people really are making getting married the end goal, and that's a mistake, because there are many people who are married who are very miserable, and sometimes being single might be better for you, right? Just being married, we're not saying that being married is good and being single is bad. Like, if we are fortunate to be married, that's wonderful, but we are not that's not necessarily a blanket statement, right? The main thing about marriage is it allowing me to get closer to Allah? Is it allowing me to get closer to my purpose as a creation of Allah on earth? That's the key. Everything else, and sometimes it's no. So then in that case, being single is better, right? Because maybe single, I can get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so for us, the key is that we want to help you set up a miraculous marriage. And there are a few components of a miraculous marriage, right? And really, like, beautiful marriages come in different shapes and sizes on the outside, but really underneath, they're just really 2 or 3 things. So if you could test and probe a person for those 2 or 3 things, right? Then if that person, if you and the other person have those 2 or 3 things, your odds of having a miraculous marriage is really, really high. And if you don't have them, right, then the odds are very low. You're going to have a mediocre or an average marriage, right? And for some people, that's good enough. It's like, I just want to get married. I'm just going to get married. Whoever will take me, I'll get married to them. Then that's good. But this book is not for you. The coaching that we do is not for you unless you are looking for an extraordinary marriage, an extraordinary life, like those of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his wife Khadija, for example, right? And so what are some of the elements of a miraculous marriage? The first one that we discuss in the book is an ability to listen, right? You have to be able to listen in a manner that is productive, right? A lot of times we listen, but we already think we know the answer. We're already making assumptions. So how do I truly listen with a beginner's mind so that I can address issues? Like, great marriages have the same amount of issues as a poor marriage. The only difference is the people in the marriage know how to handle those issues better than those, the great marriages just know how to handle the issues better and get rid of them faster than those who have a poor marriage. The reason why you have a poor marriage is that you have issues that you can't get over, that you cannot improve, that you cannot resolve. Right? So that's number one, an ability to listen with a beginner's mind. Another characteristic of a miraculous marriage, another ingredient, if you will, right, is the desire and ability to grow. right? Because you get married, let's say you get married 20, 30, 40, doesn't matter. But ultimately, the purpose of getting married, right, is to stay together forever, hopefully, right? And for many, the length is in decades. Really, that's what we're looking for, ideally, in an ideal marriage. So in that time, you're going to change. Your tastes are going to change. Your body is going to change. Your mind is going to change. Therefore, you have to. The only constant in a successful marriage is change. A miraculous marriage has the same number of issues as a poor marriage, and it's going to also have the same amount of change. What people do, they try to resist the change. When you resist the change, you're just inviting for trouble, because that's a constant. Change always happens. Right, like me right now, but like, oh, why is it getting a little chilly? Why is it not warm anymore out here? I mean, it's pretty warm in California, but it's not as warm, right? And all I'm going to do is be miserable. Like, change is happening. The seasons are going to change, whether I like it or not. So why don't I get with the program and get some clothes so that when the weather changes, I can change and adapt. So that's number 2, right? And number 3, this is probably key, is you have the same why for your marriage. Why are you married? And in this case, we're eliminating that by saying that you have to be looking for a miraculous marriage for this to work, right? If I'm just looking for a trophy wife, if somebody's just looking for a provider, a breadwinner, and when one other person is looking for a miraculous marriage, there's going to be a disconnect, meaning you are not fighting for the same thing. And we are not fighting for the same thing. You're going to show up with different energy. One, it's not a big deal for me. I just need a trophy wife, right? So I'm going to treat it as such. Whereas somebody who says, I am committed to a miraculous marriage, I'm going to be more committed. I am going to be more engaged. I'm going to be more involved in this process of cultivating this marriage. It's like a garden, right? We need 2 people. We need 2 people to cultivate this garden and make sure that the soil is turned and make sure that it's watered and irrigated and there's sun, etc. And then if we both assume that, well, one person is like, oh, I just want to have a plot of land, right? And the other person is working all the time to cultivate it. It's not going to work, right? Marriage is easy when 2 people are working towards the same thing. It's just really hard when it's just one person. So I'll pause there.
Were there any questions?
I didn't see questions. I was just mentioning what are the characteristics of a miraculous marriage. Yeah. And that's the goal. The reason why we wrote the book, walaikum salam. The reason why we wrote the book is because we wanted to help people not just get married for marriage's sake, right? Mm-hmm. But to cultivate a miraculous marriage. And that's the difference. If you're just looking just to get married so you could get off your parents' couch, or just so you could tell people that you're married or check it in the tax returns, then our coaching in this book is probably not worth it for you. Like, just find somebody to get married to. If you try enough times, you'll find somebody. But the question is, are you going to find somebody that elevates you, that gets you closer to Allah, that helps you fulfill your purpose better, that purifies you better? That's what the purpose of this book and this work is.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, that's why we really wanted to celebrate the milestone of just even having written the book, because in the achievement of something, there's also a lesson, right? So with any creative project or any, thing that you're trying to do or something you have on your mind, that is solely of your own timeline, right? That if there's no outside force, no parents telling you need to do this or boss telling you need to do this, it's just something that you want to do or learn, or some way that you want to grow on your own, it can end up being very, very hard to motivate yourself to do it, to gather and connect all the pieces that are required for you to fulfill it. But once you have that own self-motivation to do something, you will see it through, right? So that's the example of our book, that, okay, it's something we've been thinking about for 10 years, and then finally came to this moment of like, you know what, we're going to prioritize this. We're going to make time in our schedules. We're going to make time individually to write, together to sit and discuss, to review it, to edit it, and all of those things, so that we can get this thing from an idea out into the world. And similarly, you're going through a similar journey of your desire to get married. If that's something that you want, right? It may be an idea in your mind. You may feel like it's external pressure from your parents or from the community or from whoever, like, okay, this is something I have to do. This is the next step. But once it becomes something that is self-motivated, self-interest. James shares the story of, if you're in any of his programs, you can get more in depth on that story, but he shares the story of when he came to that point of like, you know what, I want to get married. It's not just some, societal construct or just a thing. It's like, no, for me, I think I'm ready. I think I want this. And how quickly things moved from that decision point. And so the success that we're celebrating for like this book, or for you getting married or whatever, it'll feel like the success is hard fought and a long time coming. Oh my God, 10 years that we wanted to write this book. And I've been looking to get married for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. And oh my gosh, I'm finally here on my wedding day, right? There's so often the dad's speech of finally our child is getting married. It seems like it's taken all of this time, but if you probably track back to the point in time where you became serious, where it became a priority personally, internally for yourself, from that moment to when it happened, likely is not that long.
It's people, because of society and things like that, we just underestimate the power of feeling that true intention of success, that true intention of achieving something. A lot of times people say, yeah, I want to get a PhD. Yeah, I want to start a company. But you look, they don't really want to, right? Yeah, I want to get married, but they really don't want to. And they haven't, right? But when you stop saying it, but you just like be it. It's about transitioning from doing to being. Once you be, like when you become like, I am ready now to get married, things accelerate quickly. And that happened in all areas of my life. When I got married within 6 months of meeting Zahra. One of this, I was flailing for 4 years in graduate school, saying I want to get my PhD, but I was just flailing. I was just fooling around, doing whatever it is, letting the environment dictate my well-being. But when I truly decided, I finished my PhD in about 18 months, which usually takes 5 years to do. I was finished it end to end, and etc. So like there is tremendous power in getting to the core of your being, as Zahra is saying, and deciding that you're going to go after something. You're going to stop this DIY. You're going to stop looking left and right. No, I'm going to focus and do this. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكِّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَوَكِّلِينَ, right? And if you make up your mind, as means that you are, if you're determined, right? If you are determined to do X, then rely on Allah, for Allah loves those who rely on Him, right? So first you need to make up your mind and commit that. And there's like an entire session on just that. I have a session on decision making. And then you have to rely on Allah. And there's an entire session, an entire lifetime of understanding what tawakkul means, right? But the key point here is if you could shift internally to wanting something, truly, as Zahra is saying, things happen miraculously faster.
Yes. And so we are taking this time to celebrate that, to acknowledge, right? Acknowledge our own efforts, our own shortcomings, our own limitations, and how it all went down, and acknowledge Allah's like generosity and benevolence and grace and facilitation, and how Allah literally like moves and shifts things for you to be able to achieve the success that you want. And without that connection to Allah, we can make things slow and hard and a slog. Or with that connection, things can flow and move. And yeah, you still might be facing challenges and obstacles, but it'll just be something that like, you're not drowning under them. You know that, okay, I've got to address this. I've got to, any feedback we're getting in the book, okay, that's for us to revise for the next edition, and doing this and that. So you just accept it all in the journey and appreciate where you're going.
So we have one question here that I see that says, it seems that the prerequisite to marriage is knowing oneself first. And I just want to take a step back into that, right? So a lot of people see, oh my God, 150, especially men. So I'm going to speak also from a men's perspective here. They will say, oh, 150 questions. What is this, an interview? How much time do we have? I don't have 7 years to go over 150 questions, right? And they become very defensive, right? And the purpose of these questions is not an interview. The questions are like a catalyst. They're just a lubricant. They're just a tool, right, to create an environment where you could figure out if you can have a miraculous marriage. That's all. It's just a game. It's just like any game, right? Like if you have children, sometimes to assess the intelligence of children, instead of asking them who built the pyramids, all these random factoids, to make them play games, right? So the game is, and it's not about the game itself. It's about me assessing the intelligence of the child by using these simple, clever puzzles, if you will. I'm not endorsing those things, by the way. I don't know anything about them, but that's the same thing here. To assess the fitness of you two coming together to have a miraculous marriage, we're using the questions. It's not an interview process. It is not going to take 7 years to go through them. We went through similar sets of questions and in a math, and right away, you can tell if somebody is right or wrong for you. You don't have to go over all 150 to decide, right? You do 3 questions. Okay, you're not for me. Bye, right? 3 questions, not based on their answer, but based on the interactions, based on the 3 qualities that I told you, the ability to grow, the ability to listen, right? And having the same why, right? If you answer those questions quickly, you move on, right? That person is not
You can
going to be right for you.
discover that in 2 conversations.
That's right. One time you could say, oh, cold start, somebody's awkward, somebody's embarrassed or whatever. You give them a second conversation, they haven't stepped up, you could move on with confidence. We'll talk about decision-making and moving on with confidence in a second. So now, going back to the question, right? And that's why it is like the questions are not like me interrogating Zahra and Zahra interrogating me and me going at home and trying to figure out, okay, which questions I'm going to ask her. The way to use this book, you bring the book in the middle of the table and both of you work on it together, right? However, before you could bring it to the middle of the table and together discussing it, there's a section on self-reflection. So that was a longer answer to say yes, before getting married. And in fact, the entire courtship process is more about you getting to know yourself than getting to know the other person.
The thing is, it's really hard to get to know yourself.
And we haven't. We've lived ourselves for decades and we don't know ourselves.
It can almost feel impossible to get to know yourself because first, you have the barrier of thinking you already know yourself. So you it doesn't even occur to you as something to look into. Oh, I need to get to know myself. The second is that you think that you do know yourself. Well, I like this and I prefer that, and I grew up this way, and my background is this, and my history is this, and my ethnicity is this. And you think, yeah, I know these things about me. I get hung up on this. My pet peeves are that. I'm motivated by this. I procrastinate when that. This is how I handle stress. And these, like, I don't know what to call them, psychological, behavioral, habitual things about yourself are good, are information, are things that you know, but it's not even actually the truth of who you are. The truth of who you are only really comes out when you're confronted with a situation, a scenario, a question, an opportunity that allows you to see the truth of who you are, right? Like, you may think, you know what, I'm an excellent leader. I'm so good at leading, blah, blah, blah. But until someone says, hey, we need you to step up and lead this group for the next week, whatever, the CEO is gone or whatever, you're not going to really know if you're an excellent leader. And in that moment, when the opportunity comes, how you respond, how you react, whether you accept it, decline it, or you accept it and how you perform is going to show you the truth of who you are, right? So it's literally all ideas. So the courtship process is an opportunity for you to get to know the truth of who you are in a way that you have no other way of, the very little ability to do without a real life scenario. So people ask us like, oh, should I just go through these questions by myself first so I'm ready? I'm like, yeah, you can answer the questions by yourself, but it's not going to be the same answer you give when you talk to someone. And it's not going to be the truth of who you are until you talk to someone. In theory, who you are and what you want in theory is vastly different from who you are and what you want in real practicality, real lived life with someone else. And you will only recognize that and realize that when you're in confrontation and friction and love and, empathy with another person. So the courtship process is an opportunity for you to know who you are. And so if you're feeling like I need to go and discover myself and I need to understand more about myself before I can, get married, in part, yes, true, but in part more so, you will do that through courtship, right? Like when we're saying within the first 2 conversations of talking to someone, you're going to realize if they're aligned and if they're a fit and if you're compatible. That's you getting to know who you are. You know what? I didn't really like the way that they spoke about this, and they were really abrupt about that. And I didn't feel like they were listening to me here. And actually, they want a totally different lifestyle. I thought I was flexible and open, but no, I'm not flexible and open. I don't want that. You learned that about yourself, and then you said goodbye to that person. Oh Allah, send me another. No, I'm not as open as I thought. I don't want that. I want something else. Then you'll talk to that next person. I'm like, okay, yeah. And then something else will come up. Oh, wait, no, I don't want that you didn't realize until you encountered it.
And so to answer the question, yes, it is about knowing yourself. It doesn't have to be first necessarily this. It always helps to have introspection, right? Always knowing why I want things, because most of the wants that we have are baggage from other people, right? A lot of Muslim men, I want a woman who wears hijab. I want a woman who doesn't do this. But when you ask, is it truly yours, or are you just insecure about what others are going to say about you, right? And so it helps in the courtship process to know yourself. But even more powerful is just to realize that coming into this courtship process, you're not coming in as, I am a set in stone person. Here I am. I'm completely rigid, and this is who I am. No, you're going to discover things about yourself and embrace them and accept them as you go through that process. So Zad, a follow-up question on this, like one or two conversations, and you can move on from somebody. What do you say to somebody that says, well, what if they could change? Yeah, I didn't like the way they said this to me and they said that to me, but maybe they'll change. Like, why do I waited so long to get into a conversation with somebody, and I had to turn down so many people who even got into a single call with them. But why rush? They might change. They will change in the future.
That's a good question, right? So we want to give people the benefit of the doubt. We want to give people 70 excuses. We want to believe in people's aspirations. They're like, I have this bad habit, but I'm working on it. I want to change it. And all of those things. So how this comes in is you want to be really present to who they are now, how they're operating now, and taking into consideration how they are projecting that they want to be in the future. But understanding that is just a projection. You have no, notion of how they will be in the future. So what you have is who they are now. So you want to be very clear, eyes wide open about who they are now, and understand like, okay, well, I really don't like, this habit that you have or this thing that you do, and making it very clear about that. And okay, well, then what is your plan to change? And what is your history of changing? I used to, whatever it was, I used to, eat a candy bar every morning for breakfast and not brush my teeth. And I changed that habit by this. And now I'm doing this. And that's how my plan is for this future, right? Like, what's your history of change and what's your motivation for change, right? Because if they're saying they want to change for you, right? I mean, that's the classic example. They said they'll convert for me, or they're planning to convert, but it's not for me. They're going to convert. What is their motivation? What is the compelling reason that they have for why they want to make this change, why they want to give up smoking, why they want to embrace Islam, why they want to, move to a farm or start a new job or do a different career, or, go against the wishes of their family? What is their motivation? And in the way that they share their motivation, what their motivation is, how they share it, like the passion and energy they have around it, will give you clues to understand and feel if this is something that has enough strength to motivate them to the next level that they're claiming they want to get to. And if you feel that from them, this feels like sincere and strong and deep, that they are really committed to this next level of version of themselves that they want to be. you know what, I am believing with them in that version of themselves, and I'm going to help them and support them and hold them to that, then that's something that you can be like, okay, they're not where I want now, but I believe in where they want to go. But if you're feeling from them like it just sounds all wishy-washy, it's just like, yeah, it could be this, and the reasons why they couldn't do it before were just like nonsense excuses, and like you're not really giving me the vibe of like this is a priority and you're really making this effort, then again, you have to be eyes wide open and be like, okay, this, the talk and the action don't seem to be matching up. And I'm not going to risk my future for something that doesn't seem to be matching up, and allow yourself to let it go. Right. And those are the situations where you can be like, well, come back to me when you've made that change. After you've already done the change, then come back, because I'm not really feeling the vibe that like you're going to do it. Just pushing here.
One thing that I'll add that is just a little simplistic. I think the key is, right, even though they might change, right, but as they are, they have to have some sort of redeeming quality, right? So that is shown in one redeeming quality is the ability to grow, the ability to be sincere, the ability to take what you're saying that you don't like and act on it, right? Putting your preferences into consideration, right?
But it also shouldn't only be about changing because you prefer it.
Yes.
It should be because, right, what's their motivation? It should be their own self-desire.
Right. And so the key is, but do that right now. If they weren't changed, right, what do they have to offer, right? I see so many people getting into a relationship with somebody and, they don't have a redeeming quality. They're just like, yeah, this is a problem, but they said they're going to change. This is a problem, they're going to change. They don't make any money, but this is going to change. They're still students, blah, 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 blah. Okay. You are basically committing to a fantasy. There is no real person here. And for men, the way to do this also is very important that you look beyond the looks. I mean, both are men and women, probably there's, levels of superficiality here, but one of the redeeming qualities can be their looks, right? Like, okay, you see that, okay, they smoke and they do this and they do that. And I need them to change. And maybe they will change in the near future in a reasonable timeline. So number one, what is a reasonable timeline for you to change? But then number two, if they weren't to change, what is else that is amazing about them to give you confidence that, again, not, oh, I could just tolerate living with this person as a married couple, but no, that you will thrive and have a miraculous marriage, right? So that's the key. And in that list, you should not put looks. Right? Like looks is great, comes and goes, whatever it may be, but looks is not gonna console you when you are down because you got rejected from a job. Looks is not going to, uplift you when you are tired in Mecca trying to go on Hajj and you need to like take yet another step to go around the Kaaba, right? So you have to focus on what truly matters and what moves the needle for you in your life.
Was there another question?
Yes, there is. Oops, sorry. So next question. It says, when it comes to deen, what is the minimum alignment required? For example, the degree of relationship with Allah, what does it mean to be religious, etc. So number one, there is no cookie cutter, right? That's where a lot of people struggle, especially in the Muslim community. And in general, like we're so used to school. Right? If you give me this answer, I'll give you 100 points. If you give me this answer, I'll give you 80 points. If you get 80, I'll give you a B, etc. Like we just have these very clear cookie cutter answers. That's why we need to know ourselves, right? The key is, what's the level of religiosity? Is there a level of deen and religiousness, a minimum level across all couples to make a relationship work? No, there isn't. We have to be aware and conscious of our minimum requirements for ourselves and for our spouse, and bring that up in the conversation. Because for sure, one of the top 3 reasons that people divorce, and I think we might cover that in our book, one of them is misaligned religious expectations. If I expect my wife to wear a bikini and she wants to wear a niqab, we're just going to be very, very disappointed in the outcome, right? And that's just too far of a gap between I'm using this as a silly example, but it comes down to everything, right? The other problem with just focusing on religion is that you cannot you trying to assess somebody's religiosity and put it like on a scale with a pen is very judgmental and very difficult to do. So that's why you want to use things that are in our book and other ways to find non-judgmental ways to assess how important is religion to somebody, what are their aspirations, where are they and what they aspire to be religiously, etc.
And you have to take into consideration the actions and the rituals that you can see versus the inner dimension that you cannot see, right? So like, their beard length and, they pray in a certain way, which madhab they're following, whether they wear nail polish or not, or,
Do they use the miswak and put henna on their beard?
Yeah, do they dye their hair? These things, right? You can be like, I don't want someone who does this, or I, only eat zabiha, or all of these things, right? First of all, you have your own standard. You have to understand and hear their standard. And you have to be able to relate. You have to be with someone with their standard that you can still respect and value them with their standard. If you are going to look down or judge them, or if you feel so strongly, like like the way, the meat industry is these days, like it can't, you must eat zabiha. You must eat zabiha. If you're not eating zabiha, like I just feel so viscerally like that it's just wrong. And you won't be able to like look at someone and be like, well, it's okay that, I just saw you order the chicken like at a restaurant, like, then you can't be with them. You can't be with them if your reaction is that strongly, or if you feel so deeply that is wrong, right? That this is haram and I can't accept it. Then you have to understand that for yourself, that you cannot be with that person and allow yourself to let them go, and look for, someone that you'll be able to hold respect for, because you do not want to come into a relationship, well, they do that and I don't really agree with it. And you're thinking you're tolerant or you're accepting of this, diverse range of behavior, but actually internally, what you're doing is you're looking down and you're holding them in contempt. I mean, that's just a relationship killer. You can't even be friends with someone that you're going to hold in contempt. So you cannot be married to someone that you hold in contempt, right? So those are the characteristic things that you have to assess. And again, there is no minimum standard. It's what is what you believe and adhere to, and what you're comfortable with someone else believing and adhere to. Just click that.
Then this one?
Yeah. Then the other part is the inner dimension, right? Like how they actually relate to Allah, feel about Allah, what is their worldview? And that's where the questions come in more for you to appreciate and understand the quality of their faith. The quantitative is kind of like the rituals, and do you pray tahajjud, and do you, make witr, and how do you fast extra, and do you fast, all of those things, right? That's the qualitative stuff that you can count and measure. But then the quality, you have to feel out through conversations. What is your, perspective on this and your view on that? And, what happened to you when you made dua for something and, it took so long for it to come, or something else happened and you feel like it hasn't come. How are you relating to Allah? Those things. And understanding that quality also is going to have a huge impact on your relationship, because if their perspective and view of Allah and the world and the dunya is too far away from your perspective, there's also going to be a clash, right? There's going to be misaligned values. So this question of religiosity, what's the minimum level, or, the hadith is to look for someone who holds on to religion. You have to choose for yourself. But what are the things? That's
good that you brought that up. I think there are two things that are really, really important to address here. That number one is the hadith, right? Right. Right. Take, you can marry somebody for looks and for wealth and for family and whatever, but the one that has the deen, then you are successful, right? This is a mistake that most people make. They think that having deen means that you wear a thobe and you have a beard. It's all about externalities. A woman wears niqab and the man has the beard. So that's what you need to focus on. And I can't tell you how many people got divorced because of only looking at the outer appearances of deen. Like we boil down our religion to some very simple and what's the word? Very not sophisticated sort of metrics for our religion, right? Even how often do you pray? People can pray all the time. It's just going up and down, right? Like if I don't have khushu', the hypocrites prayed, right? That does not mean anything unless the prayer having an effect on that person's heart to affect their behavior, their temperament, their demeanor, etc. Okay, so women, especially I see a lot of sisters, they say, oh, mashallah, this brother is this, and this brother gives khutbah, and this brother, that's fine, that's great, right? There's nothing negative about it, but that can't be it. Just because they are outwardly practicing and always going to the masjid and always giving khutbah does not absolve them from doing everything else. And here's the key. The key for both men and women is this. Like sometimes people will say, well, what about akhlaq? Let me look at the akhlaq. Let me look at the manners and the Islamic manners and Islamic etiquette that somebody brings to the table. Beautiful, but this is what you'll notice. Some of the worst people have the best akhlaq with strangers, with outsiders. What you have to look at is how she treats you in private and how you treat her in private. Even in just private conversation, even in email, even in the way they mention something to you, that's what matters. The Prophet ﷺ, most of the ahadith on his character came from who? From his inner circle, from his family, from his children, from his wives. May Allah be pleased with all of them. What happens here is that the only people that praise us are the people that don't know us, right? Who writes you a letter of recommendation? Some random person that knows nothing about you, right? And so don't be wary of outside praise. Social media, people praising you, people posting you on your birthday, all that stuff, that's great. But what you need to see is the people that know you intimately, how do they behave towards you? That's the key. And so that's what you want to see.
So to just bring that to a real life example, right? When you meet someone and the people are telling you, mashallah, this is an amazing sister. Exactly. This is an amazing brother. He's always at the masjid. He's volunteering here. He's doing that. She's doing this. She's talking in this circle. Their family is so good. Mashallah, I'm so excited for you to connect. This is great fit. And so you're excited. Okay, I found someone on the deen. And you go and you speak with them and you're just the two of you talking, or you have a mahram or whatever. You're conversing in a way that allows you to exchange. And you are just like, they feel kind of abrasive, or that was kind of rude, or I feel dismissed and they didn't hear me, or they seem to, be looking down on me because they're so active in the community. If you are feeling that overrides what everyone else is saying. That overrides all of the crap that they're doing, because it's really just crap. It's literally just crap. If when you two are talking, you're like, well, I feel worse after talking to you. No good. It doesn't matter how much they're praying. I don't care if they're praying all day and all night. No good. No good. So you really, again, this religiosity metric, the key place you're looking for it is in your two, by yourselves, interaction. That when you finish, you hang up the phone or you finish reading their email, you feel uplifted, you feel empowered, you're envisioning your future together and the things you're going to do and create, and you feel lighter and you feel good. That is a sign of someone with deen, because a person with deen uplifts everyone around them. Why was the Prophet ﷺ, the most beloved? That people did not want to leave his presence, because in his presence, they felt uplifted. They felt closer to God. They felt forgiven. They felt seen. They felt heard. They felt, okay, I can do this dunya. My dreams are possible. I'm okay. Allah will forgive me. He's reminding them constantly, Allah loves you more than a woman who wouldn't throw her baby into a fire. Allah will not forgive you even if your things were in the sea. Like, you felt good. That is a person of deen. So if you feel that way, you found a person of deen, even if on the outside, I miss my prayers. I don't pray that often. Those things can all be improved on. Those outer things can all be improved on. It's very difficult to improve on your inner character, if it's lacking, right? Like, it's very difficult for you from an outside perspective, or from, you're getting married in your 20s, 30s, for that to improve. from the outside. But when you find someone that uplifts you, that is a person of deen.
And so the main thing about the deen that I would say in terms of when discussing, sometimes people want to go straight to the appearances, right? You have to be very careful to know what is your priority, right? You have to be able to speak clearly on your priority and why, right? Because, I mean, so many men, it's like my top priority is she doesn't wear makeup. Like what? Like why is that's fine. That could be one of your priorities, but why is it top? Out of all the things that the Prophet ﷺ and Allah taught us, like that's the thing you're getting hung up on, right? And so, especially with men, they have this idea that, oh, I need to be jealous for my wife and I need to protect her honor and all these things that are just completely nonsensical, especially when you don't even know this person. Why are you starting with these things? Especially, this is what I found, especially when you don't really believe that those things are important. You're just saying it because you think that's the textbook thing to say. There was one man that was courting a girl, and he said, okay, I want to talk to this girl, whatever. Then he speaks and he says, well, I've heard that your voice is awra. It's like a private part or whatever. And so I cannot speak with you. We're not going to speak on the phone anymore. Okay, that's what he's saying. His top priority is that I'm a religious man. I want to project that I am religious and strict, right? And we're not going to talk on the phone. I cannot speak to you on the phone. We need to find some other way. I don't know what was the conclusion of how they're going to communicate, right? But then guess what? A few days later, he was on the phone with her all the time, right? So this thing was such a priority to you just a couple of days ago, and it was haram, and I was told it was haram, and blah, blah, blah. And now you're just talking on the phone. That tells you that this person and what they value in terms of deen is very shaky. And so it's something to, again, pay attention to when you say choose the one, because choosing one of the deen is not just a man choosing a woman that has a deen, but a woman choosing also a man that has a level of deen that's compatible to hers. So be very careful on what people prioritize in the deen. I think there's another question on the other thing right there. Yeah.
Okay, feel free to send in your questions. This is a celebration. I brought my fancy cup. Takes forever to drink though.
Knowing self, you're welcome. I mean, we're welcome. Knowing self is important for both how to be confident about the compatibility of the other person when it comes to thinking about them as a good parent to children. So how do you assess if somebody's going to be a good parent to children?
I mean, nothing can prepare you for parenthood.
Especially if you've never had children. It's all theory now at this point.
And the best parents, the best thing you can do for your parent is the
best husband or wife.
Is be in love and treating your spouse well.
Correct.
So don't make more obstacles than there are.
The best father is the one that treats their mother well. That's number one. Like, I don't care if you change diapers, or if you wash, or if you do all these things. That's
even if you're not there, you're sent off to war. You're not even in the house. The kids don't grow up with the father in the home, but they can feel his love from the gifts he's sending and the calls he's making and whatever. The treatment is far more important than the day-to-day actions, because the treatment and the care and the love between you two will end up translating into the actions that you do with your children and the discussion. And you don't know, what if you get a child who's disabled, and what if you get a child who's this, or what, you don't know what kind of child you're going to get, what kind of challenge they're going to have, and how you're going to navigate it. So to try and assess, like, what kind of parent are you going to be? Well, I'm going to be a different parent if I have a disabled child than if I have a healthy child, than if I have a miscarriage. You don't make it more complicated. You cannot know the answer to that question.
I think I just want to highlight that. I think what we want to do is this part. A lot of people now are making courtship way more complicated than it needs to be. Do not ask, right? The Prophet ﷺ taught us, right? Don't ask things that don't pertain to you, right? Like the children of Israel who asked too many questions, right? Mm-hmm. So in our case here, we outline for you what you need to identify, right? Can you grow? Can you listen? Do we have the same expectations of marriage? These three things. you could just discuss, do you want to have children? If somebody
I mean,
says,
we
I
have-
do not want, we have a
We have
section
a
on
section
children.
on children and
But to
family
say, am
in
I
the
gonna,
book.
like, it's very, again, what I mean by that is we start chasing our tail and making these unnecessary obstacles. Me predicting if somebody's going to be a great parent is nearly impossible. It's just like me predicting if it's going to be sunny tomorrow, right? But clearly, if they're not fit to be a good husband or a good wife, I mean, the odds are they're not going to be a good parent, because it's a lot harder to care for a child than it is to care for a spouse, right? And so it's more thankless as a job. And so basically, the focus, the priorities, are you going to be a good husband or wife? Like, let us not go, are you going to be a good son-in-law? Are you going to be a good cousin? Are you going to be a good husband? Like, let's worry about that
Gonna be a
later.
good uncle.
Yes, exactly. Like, those will come, right? And in general, if you cannot be a good husband or a good wife, you are not going to be a good uncle or a good cousin or a good neighbor. Like, that's just, the odds are stacked against you. So don't make things more difficult than they need to be. In your current predicament, you're focusing on being, are they compatible for me to be a good husband? And you could ask, do you want children? We have an entire section on children and family. If somebody that we know people who, one person's just like adamantly, I do not want children. I do not want children. That person's like, I want children. All right, bye. Like, that's it. That's it. You don't want children. Of course, people could change, but if other things, so that's one strike, if you will. But then if on the other dimensions that we mentioned, they're also not trending well, you move on with confidence, because they are not going to give you the life that you want, which is to be a fulfilled father or fulfilled mother.
Right. So the questions in our book around children and family are just on the general parameters of what is your vision of a family and home life. But it is not getting to the heart of how exactly are you going to be as a parent? I mean, we do have a question of like, how are you raised and how do you think that's going to impact how you raise your kids? Like, were your parents strict versus, and all of those things. So it's going to give you some gleaning. Knowing how they were raised will, we end up becoming like our parents, unfortunately or fortunately, on what their parenting style will end up being. But your focus is on, are they going to be a good partner to me? Because that is the main priority. Because if they are, as James already outlined, right, everything else flows from that. So if you get tripped up by like, I'm not sure if they're going to be a good parent. Well, why are you focusing on that question or fixated on that question? Is it because they're actually not a good partner? So now you're using this as an excuse?
Or watch my session on self-sabotage. We talk about that.
Or yeah, they are a good partner, but I'm looking now for like, I'm way out. I'm kind of
Yes.
scared. I'm kind of nervous. Well, I'm not sure about this. Oh, and I'm not sure about how would they handle that? You're just making up hypothetical situations. Like, stay where you are. Stay where you are. When you're talking to them now, do you feel good and uplifted? And can you see yourselves? The main thing about marriage is, it's like work. It's like a job, right? A good employee, a good work environment is where you can handle the challenges that come up in a productive way. If any challenge comes up and it can derail the whole company and go bankrupt, then that is not a secure business or company. So same thing with the marriage. Like, you're going to be hit with things that you don't know about. A pandemic here, this here, a firing there, someone dies, blah, blah, blah. You're going to be just hit with things coming at you. And how well can you two navigate unknown, unpredictable challenges and even known and predictable challenges? That's what you're trying to establish. So did that answer that person's question? And I see another question.
That was it for that question.
Okay. Someone says, I don't get the part about aspects of the deemed dismissed with a man when some people who don't think Salah is a priority never get to doing it.
I was gonna actually mention that. What you want to see, I just lost track when Zahra was speaking. One thing to pay attention to is their priorities. Like, if their priorities, and are they sticking to their priorities? Because if they're not sticking to their priorities, they're not going to stick to you. You're not going to be a priority, even if they say they are, and then then they're just not going to keep their word, right? So they say wearing makeup is the most important thing, and then they buy you makeup. I mean, you got it. That's a red flag, right? Number two is when people talk about their own selves, right? I don't pray. I smoke. I do this. I do that. They might even show. I see a lot of corner cutting behavior in some men, right? Some sort of gray area behavior, right? And that's fine. I mean, whether to share your sins or not share your sins is not the topic of conversation right now. But the point is if they do share shortcomings, such as they don't pray, what you want to pay attention to is, as Zahra said before, are they intrinsically motivated to start praying at some point, right? Like, I am trying, I'm struggling, I can't wake up, I fall asleep. I knew one person, that's what they said. They told me, listen, I cannot stay up. I miss Isha all the time, because I was like, man, this person's going to sleep real early. Like, they cannot make Isha, right? It's like, cannot pray Maghrib and Isha together and all this stuff. But are they hopeful? Are they, I don't want to use the word remorseful necessarily, but are they like looking towards improving that area of their life? If they're completely unashamed, if they're completely unapologetic, hey, I smoke, I gamble, I cut corners in my business or at work or whatever, and they're completely unabashed about it, that's a red flag. That one is, again, when we talk about, oh, somebody can grow, it doesn't seem like they're trying to grow intrinsically. Like, you could force them. I know so many women that, like, my husband stops praying, they start doing all these things. Like, listen, if a man doesn't want to pray, doesn't want to pray, no matter how big the stick or the carrot. Like, it has to come from within. And that's why we cannot change people, no matter what we believe, even our children. For those that are interested in being parents, you cannot change people. All you can do is emulate, focus on yourself, and you do those things and let the other people find their own motivation. So if somebody is unrepenting, I guess, for lack of a better term, around not doing certain things openly, that's a red flag. But if somebody says, hey, I don't pray, and I'm trying to get better, I'm trying to find ways to do it, I really want to do it, I've been trying to have my friends call me in the morning so I can wake up. In that case, they're not getting perfect marks, if we're going with marks, but they're not getting a 0 or a fail either. I hope that answers the question.
Well, I mean, you brought up so many things that I just want to add nuance to it.
Zahra always clarifies the nonsense that I say, so thank you, dear. I'm glad that you're here, because otherwise I'll just
balance each other out.
Just be
right?
like ranting.
That's the point of being a team. Okay, so we're going to use the example of a guy saying he doesn't pray. If he's like, oh, if you're like, okay, well, do you pray? And he's like, no, I don't pray. And you want to lean into, because when James said cutting corners, this cutting corners concept is like, well, I already told you. I told you I don't pray. Like, you knew that. You knew that I don't pray. Don't ask me again about prayer. I already told you I don't, right? It can become like, because I said it, now I don't have to do it. And it's not even about like that I want to pray or what's my connection with the law. It's like, I don't want to be in a position, and I don't want to be in a place where this is expected of me. So instead of letting people expect anything of me, I'm going to cut corners and say that I don't do that thing, right? And so if that's the case, right? Or you have men saying like, I'll never change diapers, and I'll, never do that. Like, well, I already told you I wasn't going to do that, right? And then they have the baby, and you're thinking, well, once the baby comes, for sure they're going to help. And no, I told you I'm not going to change any diapers. And it's the stance is not one of, it's not about what the thing is about. Yeah. It's not about the thing. It's more about the position of, I'm going to hold a position, and regardless of the circumstances or the situations, I'm going to stick to that position because it is the kind of the easier way, or the way that's an out, or the way that, like, I can always go back to, well, I told you that I don't do this, or I won't do that, or I don't plan to do that. And this is something to catch in a person's behavior or manners, or the way that they're speaking with you, because it can come up in other random things, right? The prayer example is a good example.
Let me just add to that, is that one other key about I told you is that what most people do is like, I told you I don't pray. I told you I don't pray, right? I told you I don't pray. But you also have to tell them, I told you prayer is very important for me and a partner. A lot of times people don't say it. They shy away from saying it. It's like, I hope they change. Inshallah, they'll change. Right? Sorry, I just wanted to add that part, is that when somebody says, I told you, you also need to say, I told you too. That, and then now what is that? Now that's a conflict. Right then and there, you can see it, you can embrace it, you can walk away. both of you are not hearing each other. We have the 4 levels of listening. You're at level number 1 right now. I am saying my message. I don't pray. I told you I didn't pray. I told you I didn't pray. The other person, I told you it's important for me that you pray. I told you it's important for me that you pray. And that's level 1 listening. Nobody's listening to each other. You're just shouting at each other. You could dissolve the relationship right then and there. But sorry for.
But if you feel like, you know what, this is not something to break up on, or there's something more here, which there is. What the way to approach this now is to be like, oh, that's interesting. Why don't you pray? And did you ever pray? And you want to get into what the mindset is and the psyche behind this prayer thing, because what's going to come up is that it's not about prayer. Probably if you've met a Muslim, I don't care how far they've strayed, they probably prayed once or twice in their life, right? So if they told you, I don't pray and I've never prayed, it's highly unlikely, if they've been Muslim for whatever, even a year even, that they have never done that. So you want to get underneath, what is this, especially if they become very assertive about whatever the thing is. Why are you so because there's very few things that we're so, this is me. This is me. And if someone is doing that, it's for some other reason. So you want to get under it and not feel like, well, they said it so definitively or so seriously that I, just
Took it as face value.
I took it for face value. I'm trying to think of what could be an example on the woman's side. Maybe a woman saying, that, I'll never work once I have kids, or I'll always work, whatever, right? And saying it so definitively, like, I'll never work. You want to get under that, because again, why are they being so, you don't know how the circumstances are going to be when that happens. So why are you so definitive now? For most things, we're like, under these conditions, I do this, with these conditions, I do that. This is, this is my preference. But if someone is very stringent, take it as an opportunity to dig deeper, because it is in the digging that you're going to understand if okay, this is a person I need to run away from, or, oh, this is a person who was wounded around this area and they need some tenderness, and they need to understand, that I'm, not going to be, however the person wounded them before is going to be, and that this is a different situation. There's a lot more to say here, but I don't want to get into that.
There's one question here. So one person is asking, how can I ask a question in private? I mean, you can send us a message, but my advice is just don't. Let me put it this way, since Zara talked about that, the power of wanting to change, right? A lot of people send me questions all the time, and I never answer, unfortunately, because here's why. The problem that you are facing took weeks, months, years to get to that point, right? It is not like, I had a flat tire. Having a flat tire it could be that you went over a nail, but in most cases, you drove the car for a really long time. You didn't rotate your tires. You didn't maintain the car, and then you had a flat tire, right? It's not about that instant. It was months of neglect, weeks of neglect to get to that point. So when people ask me a question, right, these are hypotheticals, we can answer them quickly, but your situation is very complex and warrants an adequately complex answer, right? Or a nuanced answer, right? And that's the bane of the Muslim community now. We just have all this generic, unpersonalized advice. Pray more, do this, do that. And it solves nothing for anyone. It's just same cookie cutter advice that you give to everybody, whether they're 50 years old, whether they're 10 years old. It does not make sense, right? And so I can give you an answer to any question, but the reality is you are very unlikely to do anything with my answer. I get a lot, oh, can I pick your brain? Can I get advice? Very few people follow on the advice, because why? The behavior that got you where you are right now, right? The only way to get out of it is to decide to change. And so sending me a question, me giving you an answer in private may not likely yield the result that you want. And so that's why I don't answer a lot of questions, because a lot of them are very complex and it took years. And even when you ask them, you're not giving me the full context for me to give the right answer, right? So I like to say, I don't know. But I just wanted to address that. If you're serious about transforming, right, you acknowledge that, look, I am where I am today because of weeks, months, years of certain behaviors. I'm ready now to spend an equal amount of time getting out of it. Maybe not an equal, but commensurate amount of time to get out of my situation. I'm looking for a long-term solution, not a Band-Aid, not just a one-word solution. For example, people say, shall I stay or shall I leave with this person? It's just a one word, stay, leave, right? I could just say like, but you need a more elaborate answer that requires a lot of time. Then book a call and we could talk for an hour where I could understand your situation and I can prescribe a long-term solution. Right now, we're giving your particular situation its due respect. I cannot answer questions that people send me on Instagram and LinkedIn. I don't even see the questions on Instagram. They don't come to my mailbox. So please, if you are looking for help, book a call. That is the best way, but you have to be serious that I am going to take action on that advice, not just listen to just feel good about myself.
I mean, what James is really getting at is that it's the part of the reason that we wrote the book, right? Getting these questions. What should I ask? I've been talking for 6 months and I don't know. Like, you've been talking for 6 months and you don't know, like, what are you talking about? Right? You should know by 6 months. What we're saying is that we are trying to give you fuller answers. We are trying to give you fuller answers. So we wrote a whole book as a fuller answer. We've been on this live stream, giving more. In the book, it comes with a Q&A session that is an hour-long Q&A session to accompany the book. It comes also, we're working on an email sequence that's going to support you step by step, guiding you through the book. We are trying to give you the fullness and the richness of any learnings and wisdoms and knowledge and things that we've gathered from other clients to support you more fully to get to the heart of what you want. And what is the heart of what you want? Peace, love, happiness, right? Like, it sounds cliche, but that's all you want. You want to be living in harmony and peace with someone that you love and feeling good and all of that. And it's not going to come from, okay, do I leave or do I stay? Was their beard the right length or not? They sold me, they prayed, but they didn't. Should I say? It's not going to just come from, yes, okay, yes to that, no to that, go here, don't go there, move the wedding to this date and plan this. Like, it's, there's no like little recipe. It's the understanding of all of who you are, all of what's led you to this point, all of what's blocked you and prevented you from reaching where you want to go, and then festering out all those cobwebs so you can get there. It is the reason that we have both transitioned into coaching, because the power of it was so transformational in our own lives. Like, oh my God. So for me to understand myself and sift through myself, like, I can have it and I can do it. It's all within me. I'm the only one in my way. And if I can break free of that, I can get to where I want to go. And so, like, we got to help other people do that, because look what it did for us. So now we're helping you, but it's not short term. That's why we have programs. We have year-long programs. We have intensive programs. We have our sessions that are in depth, that come with assignments and journaling prompts and homeworks. And we have guided meditations and all of these things, because the fullness of what you are looking for, peace, love, happiness, joy, contentment, faith, belief, fulfillment, cannot come from a simple thing. Okay, I'm going to wake up in the morning and do this, and I'm going to tell this person this one thing. It is the richness of understanding what has held you where you are, and how can you break free of basically the gravitational pull that's keeping you in this orbit that you don't want to be into, and transition you into a new orbit, right? Breaking free of your own gravitational pull to the new level that you want to get to. And so if you want that, then you have to really, again, how we started this call, when did our success come? When we finally made that decision, okay, we're going to prioritize this. We're going to put our time in our schedule. We are going to block off, discussion time. We're going to put money into
a retreat,
investing time, money, energy into what we wanted to do. And we saw the results come out. And when we did the same for our own lives, we put time in hiring coaches. We put time in taking time.
I quit my full-time job
for ourselves, going to Hajj, going to Umrah, investing in coaches, investing in Hajj and Umrah, investing in like the tears and the crying and the arguments and the, what are we doing? And the whole mess that is understanding, like, why am I here? What am I doing? Where do I want to go? Why do I want to go there? What is the gap? How can I bridge the gap? It's a lot, and it's deep. And if you really want that, the only thing we know for sure is that it's possible. It is possible. It comes from your decision and then your commitment and your investment in that. And I mean, and that is the entire message of Islam, right? Like that Islam came to the Prophet ﷺ and those first early believers investing their lives, giving up their families, being boycotted, and giving up their incomes, their sustenance, giving up their time to sit with the Prophet, to hide in secret, to become the early believers who are the greatest Sahaba, the greatest group of people ever to go out and then transform the whole world, spreading the message of Islam everywhere. There was a cost. It cost them their old selves. It cost them their old relationships. It cost them their old businesses. It cost them their old ways of being, their old habits. It cost them. Right now, the problem with Islam that I experienced for myself was like, okay, Allah, I'm praying. Okay, Allah, I'm making dua. Okay, Allah, I went to Hajj. Like, even that was me even after Hajj. I went to Hajj. Like, now shouldn't I get everything I want? Like, I think that just by doing a little bit of stuff, with me not really changing, I'm just going to do a little bit of stuff. You did what I asked. I did what you asked, Allah. So now can I, have the money and the career and the family and the things? Can I have it now? That's not how it works. Allah is asking for your submission, for you to give up everything about who you think and know yourself to be, let go of all of that and come to Allah, released from that so that you can be more than who you were before. In a way that is going to surprise and delight you. And what you will now perceive as a cost, oh my God, I have to invest this much in quitting my job or in going away from this relationship and not talking to those friends and into coaching and all of these things. Oh, this is a lot. When you come on the other side, you're like, that's all it was? I just had to let go of that person who I didn't really like anyways. And I had to quit that job that I hated. And it was just like, stop doing the things that I didn't like and move to the things that I do. You're gonna, on the other side, be like, oh my God, that was a bargain. That was a bargain. And that's what we're inviting you to. Book a call. James can drop the links. I know we have one other question on
I have a
Instagram.
question here. I'll answer it in a second. But what I was going to say, all I wanted to say about this is two things. Number one, think about somebody you admire. Okay? Think about somebody you admire, whether they're an artist, an athlete, a scholar, whatever it is. Here's the key about them. They were committed to that. See, most of us just dabble. Let me watch an Islamic lecture. Let me send a question. Let me do this. Let me do that. We are not committed. Oh, if it's easy, I'll do it. Like, can I send a question for free? I'll send it. Like, who cares? And that's just dabbling. And you never admired anybody who dabbled. If you were an artist and you just like, oh, this person like kind of looks like they're working, and then they never came back and worked again. They're just dabbling, showing up, doing things like maybe going to school to learn art and then stopping. You'll never admire them. You admire people because they were committed. Okay. And so if you're ready to stop dabbling and start committing, again, book a 1-hour call. That's my commitment to you, is that I'll give you undivided attention for 1 hour to discuss your current situation. Okay. Number two, ask yourself this question when you are asking for when you send questions to people, right? Or the question is, what am I giving? What is, like Zara said, what is the price that I am paying when I ask this question? Right? Most of us, it's nothing. It's like, well, I'm going to try and ask this question and hopefully something will happen. But you didn't put anything into it. You didn't put any effort into the question besides just writing the question itself. And that, if you put something that's void, something void is going to come back. And so when you ask a question, the problem is that you're not going to get what you want, and I'm not going to get what I want, right? What I want is for you to transform. And what you want is for your life to get better. So it's pretty much the same things. So in a question, neither you're getting your purpose, nor am I getting my purpose. And so before asking a question, ask, what am I willing to give with this question? I am willing to stop. I'm willing to come on a call. I am willing to come meet you in person, right? If you live in LA, come meet me in person. I'm glad, I'll be happy to have a coffee with you guys, right? I'll come to your live events, whatever. And so that's just in general, that's from my experience. I used to be an entrepreneur and I used to ask a lot of people to come and meet me. And what I came to realize is that I wasn't giving him, it wasn't that I wasn't giving that person anything. It wasn't like I wasn't paying them or I wasn't, rewarding them or whatever it is. But energetically speaking, I wasn't putting anything behind that ask. I wasn't like, yes, Allah, I am committed to doing whatever it takes. Or maybe, yes, I will pay, or whatever it may be, right? Like when we just ask for things willy-nilly just for free from an energetic perspective, nothing comes out of it. It's just us wasting our time, delaying yet another day, another month, another week for our transformation. So let's take the last question. It says, in case of mental health conditions that someone shares in the courtship process, what would be the best way to continue the process without causing hurt? I mean, it's not clear who's hurting who, or like is people weaponizing the fact that somebody shared that they have mental health issues?
Okay, well, there's two scenarios, right? They've shared a mental health condition and you think that it can still work out, but there needs to be certain parameters and certain boundaries and certain things adhered to. You know, you have to take your meditation or being on therapy or whatever. And so you're like, how can I really express this to them without being hurtful? Could be one interpretation of this question. Of course, the questioner, please fill in. Or they've expressed their mental health condition and then you're like, oh God, no, I can't. I can't.
Yes,
I don't have
wanna-
capacity. So how can I, let them go without causing hurt? Okay, so if they've expressed something and you're like, this is a deal breaker for me, the most unhurtful thing you can do with someone that you don't see a future with is to tell them right away, is to not just string them along, not to, make there be false hope where there isn't. And so, in a gentle way, you can be like, I've loved getting to know you. I appreciate, everything that you shared. I just don't think I have the capacity to be with someone like this, but I do believe that, inshallah, there's someone out there for you, right? So letting them know in a straightforward and direct way what it is, and whether that's, on the phone, in person, via text, via email, like just communicating that clearly. The second piece is like, okay, well, how can I move forward in a non-hurtful way? Like, okay, well, you know what? This doesn't sound like a deal breaker for me yet, but I need to understand more fully. Like, what is your medical history? Can you show me, your, diagnosis, or what your therapist says, right? What is the treatment plan? How long is the treatment for? How consistent are you about going to it? What happens if you fall off, right? Really getting into what could be invasive and uncomfortable questions. So you will have to preface it by being very clear about where you stand. So you'd have to say, I think that there is good potential here for the two of us, for this relationship to work out. And so because of that, the only way that this would be successful is if we are very open and clear and honest about what your condition is and how we're going to navigate that. So for us to do that, I'm going to really need to know in depth and fully all about it. So can we discuss, yes, what is your history? What is the treatment? What happens if not? How do you do the treatment? Blah, blah, blah. And you get into all of that so you can have an understanding of like, okay, yes, this is something that, we can deal with, we can manage, and I can cope with together. Or, wow, this sounds like a lot. This is more than I can manage. And no, I don't think it's going to work out. But it will take that conversation. And there is a way to do it in a gentle, kind way that will not hurt. And of course, if you say this and they say, oh my gosh, you've hurt me, you've offended me. Well, part of it, if you attend any of our sessions, part of that is that, well, that's not your responsibility, right? Your intention was not to hurt. The way you approached it with diplomacy and tact and empathy was not to hurt. And if they took it as hurtful, now that's something on their end, right? So I'm presuming that the person saying this is trying not to hurt or offend.
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for celebrating with us. Okay. And we are so excited to have our book out, to have read all of your guys' reviews, to see how it helps you. The main thing with anything, right? With Islamic advice you're getting from the masjid, with things that you're learning online, posts that you're seeing that are really good, is, are you applying it? Are you applying it? I've had someone reach out to me who has the book and asked me a question or told me something. I'm like, but that's in the book. Did you read the book? Like, I haven't read it yet. Well, the book cannot help you if you do not read it. So let's start there. Get the book, read the book. We outline it. You have it there for you in black and white. We'll save this live. You have this as another resource. Like I said, the book comes with a Q&A recorded session. You have to apply it. You have to revisit it. You have to think through it. You have to talk about it. And you can reach out to us with questions. If they're more than they can be answered concisely, as James was sharing, we'll invite you to book a call. But we are available. Like, that's why we wrote the book, to make it as widely available and as fully answered as possible. So we really appreciate everyone who's joined us on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Zoom. It's been great.
Thank you, everybody. Assalamu alaikum.